Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, March 30th, 2010 edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski. You're listening to LibertyRadioLive.com, and my guest today is Eric John Phelps, author of the website Vatican Assassins and of a book, it's VaticanAssassins.org, and the book is Vatican Assassins. And I just want to make sure Eric's there. Are you on the line, Eric?
Yes, I am, Greg.
Okay, fine. We got the connection going. I've got a lot to talk about today, Eric, and I wanted to start out basically with one thing regarding the Jesuit order. I know you've researched them more than most people, and yesterday on my show I read something from a senator in 1916, and it's been almost now, 100 years since anything like this has ever been produced in the Senate, and that was he introduced the secret Treaty of Verona and explained why. And I wanted to get your take on that and exactly why, in your estimation, everything has been silenced ever since that message. Go ahead.
Well, the Secret Treaty of Verona of 1822 was an outgrowth of the Congress of Vienna of 1814-1815 that followed the Napoleonic Wars, of which time the Jesuits were busy getting back everything that they had lost from their previous suppressions, and ultimately the bull of extinction and suppression by Pope Clement XIV. So 1822 comes along with the Secret Treaty of Verona, and this is an open conspiracy against the historic Protestant United States to invade into the Western Hemisphere and take it over for the Jesuit papacy, for which reason Jefferson and Adams put forth the Monroe Doctrine, Jefferson and Monroe put forth the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, the following year. So the Secret Treaty of Verona, again, was an extension of the Congress of Vienna, and its purpose was to destroy all free governments, particularly the free governments of the West that had been born out of the Protestant Reformation. And the reason why I believe this has been silenced is because the continual Jesuit influence in the Congress and as well as in the executive branch that continue to stifle this. And I have a quote in my PowerPoint written in 1880 that said the Jesuits completely controlled the press. In Justin Fulton's work, Washington in the Lap of Rome, that he wrote in about 1880, he said that the Vatican was in total control of the American press by that time.
Yeah, and so then we move along, and we see in 1916 this is introduced into the Senate and into the congressional record, and we see that there was still an awareness of this going on back then, at the turn of the century. But as the years have passed, we see less and less dissent and more control by Rome. You're one that spends a lot of time researching the power they have today, and I thought we might start out talking about the Knights of Malta, how they relate to our government, and how this has been covered up to the American people so that the Jesuits, still doing their infiltrating, really get away with controlling the world without anybody knowing it, as one of their Jesuit generals once said. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta was the first crusading order established in, I believe, around 1048. It's openly there in 1099 after Jerusalem is taken from the Muslims, and they will be part in administering the first kingdom of Jerusalem for some 80 years. The Knights of Malta have always been a crusading order for the papacy. They're soldiers for the Pope, and to establish his universal world spiritual and temporal power, temporal power being the political power. And remember, the Pope claims to have two powers, his spiritual power and his temporal power, and they are symbolized by the two keys on the Vatican flag. So the Knights of Malta were established for this purpose. They were first known as the Hospitallers, then the Knights of Rhodes, and then finally the Knights of Malta. They were known for their great wars that they engaged in with the Turks or with the Muslims. In fact, the Battle of Lepanto in 1571 began on October 7th, the very day that the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. Iraq in 2003 was on October 7th. So this whole crusade in the Middle East is in memory of the Battle of Lepanto, of which the Knights of Malta won and defeated Suleiman the Magnificent. So the Knights of Malta, they have always been the soldiers. They've been the great mariners for the papacy, the great commercial men of commerce. And they have branches all throughout the world. We also have to remember that Napoleon, because the Knights of Malta had suppressed the Jesuits in 1768, they had expelled the Jesuits from the island of Malta in 1768. 30 years later, Napoleon invades Malta, takes all of its treasures and weapons for the invasion of Egypt, and drives the Knights of Malta off the island, and they take up residence in Russia. So, at the same place where the Jesuit general is, because the Jesuits were now suppressed, and they had taken up their residence in Russia. So this is where the Knights of Malta enter into a secret arrangement with the Jesuits that they will be subordinate from about 1798 on. So the Knights of Malta, they have many different branches. They have 3 branches here in the U.S. They have the Federal Branch, the Southern Branch, and the Western Branch. I believe that's what they're called. The most well-known is the Federal Branch. It used to be known as the National Branch. And it's located in Washington, D.C., and they also have their headquarters in St. Patrick's Cathedral under the Archbishop of New York, Timothy Dolan. And the Knights of Malta are in charge of the press, commerce, medicine, all sorts of key areas of importance in the country, and I list them in my book. And today some of the most notorious knights are men like Lee Iacocca, who still lives, Arthur DeLoach, who still lives. He was third in command of the FBI at the time of the Kennedy assassination. And they just keep adding new members. In fact, Tom Cruise is a Knight of Malta. And several other actors. Bruce Willis is a Knight of Malta. They have many popular actors who are now Knights of Malta. Sylvester Stallone is a Knight of Malta. It's amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And so when we look at this organization behind the scenes, you've done a lot of work in uncovering who these people are today, and then you can show what their allegiance really is. Anybody else that comes to mind?
Who's a knight?
Yeah.
Well, Rupert Murdoch is, I'm sure, a Knight of Malta. He's also a Knight of St. Gregory, and he is the head of the Fox News, the Fox Mega News Corporation. And I think he's one of the 10 most powerful media controllers in the world. And he's a Knight of St. Gregory, very intimately tied to the Pope. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, right along with his dear Masonic Jewish friend, George Soros.
Yeah, why don't we touch on that for a minute? Because a lot of people in the media, in the alternative media, and I haven't spoken with you in a while, so I wanted to update people on what you're doing. You have a show of your own in the afternoon, and we discussed this in the past, but it's been a while. But I wanted to get your impression on what you think is happening right this day in Israel, because the point, I had Barry Chamish on my show, and he has been talking about a buildup of rockets on the 120,000 rockets on the border states, as well as ground troops ready to go and attack Israel. And I wanted to get your opinion on that and what that will lead to eventually, because many people are saying this will be the kickoff of World War III. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I tend to agree that what's going to be happening in Israel here shortly will be the kickoff of World War III. Another connection I have in Jerusalem tells me that it told me in December that Israel will attack Iran in 12 months. So, because we must always remember that the government of Israel is controlled by the Pope, just like this one, just like the government of any Arab nation, just like the government of Russia, the papacy is going to use the Israeli government to apparently ignite this war with Iran, and then all the Jews in North America can be blamed for it, so that this will justify their roundup and extermination. They intend to kill all 6 million Jews in the U.S. and Canada. So they need a reason for this. Well, if Israel attacks Iran, and then we have all these Muslims that the Jesuits have brought